Hello there guys, we're just going to do camera audio today, so I apologize, the audio is not going to be all that good. But today we are reviewing a book, something I do not typically do. This is my first ever book review, but this is a review I've been wanting to do for quite a while actually. This is a review of all, and I do mean all, the Birds of the World published by Lynx. I've been wanting to do this review since kind of before I got this book in a way. When I was originally thinking about getting it, I was looking up on YouTube to see if there were any reviews of this book, and I didn't see any, none that were like satisfying and went into detail about the pros and cons of it. And that was kind of annoying to me because this is a pretty darn expensive book. And so I kind of felt like there might be a chance I'm taking a little bit of a risk with it, and I was kind of worried that it might not be fully worth it for the price. So to try to fill that YouTube review gap and potentially give someone else out there the review that I wish I had had way back then, we're going to review this book. I love this book. This is honestly one of my favorite books. It was, for me, I apologize if you hear the noise of ice moving in the fridge. For me, this was 100% a great purchase to make. So let's crack it open real quick so you can kind of see what it looks like on the inside. Ooh, we appear to have some parrots here. So first off, I would like to cover what this book is not. This book is not a field guide to the birds of the world. It provides no ID information. It provides no pointing out of particular field marks. It provides no information about the natural history, none of that. You basically just get the pictures of these birds, plus some other interesting things that are in each of their little sections that we'll cover later. But it is definitely not designed to be an identification guide of any kind. What this book is a vessel for you to be able to view the diversity of all of the world's bird species in one convenient place. I often find that when I'm learning about a new bird group or something cool about a particular species in a group, I often want to look at all of them. And this book is great for that. If I want to look at all of the bustards of the world, then I just have to open up this book and look, here they all are. Yeah, okay, they are just all on that one page. Here they all are, every single species of bustard in the world. And I just think this is super cool and super satisfying. You can really see all the diversity that exists in this group. And though there are certainly online resources that provide similar situations where they'll show a whole bunch of birds next to each other, I personally just don't find any of them as satisfying, right? Because I don't know if it's something about them just being all on a screen, maybe the fact that like oftentimes they just have a picture and they don't have like any range information or anything like that on it. I don't really know, but I think there's just something about the physicality of this book. I have much more enjoyed looking at the diversity of birds in the world through this book than I have looking at it on any online resource. So that's kind of my general overview of what this book is and what I really like about it. But let's actually take a look now. Oh, there's a deer outside. If it gets into a better position, I might film it real quick and we'll add it to the review. There's the deer under the apple tree. What an epic girl. Epic inclusion in this book review video. Oh, is she gonna eat an apple? Maybe she's just gonna eat the leaves. It's just leafing time. But now that I've covered kind of like what I really like generally about the book, let's look at a specific section and like kind of the information that this book holds. So we'll focus in on not selecting any particular bird. We'll select on this guy, the gray go-away bird. So first off, I should say that this book is organized taxonomically. Every time that you begin a new order of birds, you'll have this cool little line here that says the order. In this case, we're in the Musophagiformes, and it will tell you how many families of birds are in that order. In this case, only one. The Musophagidae, which are the Turacos. And then underneath this epic blue line here, we have information on how many genera are in the family, how many species, the habitats that they normally live in, and the biogeographic region that they inhabit. In this case, Turacos are only found in the Afrotropical region, which basically just means sub-Saharan Africa. So that's much broader at the page level. Now let's see what we can see when we zoom in on our good friend here, the gray go-away bird. So we do have some more obvious things here. We have the name, duh. We have the scientific name that is underneath the name. And then we have how many subspecies there are. This book, hold on, I'm going down now to the black-billed Turaco. does show differences in subspecies when the differences are notable. So we can see here are two different subspecies of the black-billed turaco, one that has more purple wing and one has more of a green wing. But a lot of the time different subspecies look basically the same, so they only have one illustration when that is the case. And they'll also have multiple illustrations when there's differences in appearance between the males and the females. We also see that we have a range map. In this case, the range is colored in green, indicating that the bird can be found here year-round. But if there are areas where the bird can only be found when it's either breeding or non-breeding, those will be in both yellow and blue. We also have information of how high of elevation you can find them, which is cool. You have the length of the bird, and then you have a little rectangle that tells you its conservation status. In this case, the gray go-away bird is least concern, but other species will be labeled things such as VU for vulnerable, NT for near threatened, as well as endangered and critically endangered. And all of these are the status that the bird had as of December 2019, which I guess was the latest update to the IUCN conservation statuses when this book was made. But now, let's talk about this cool red pie sliced up circle that is in this image. I'm sure you've noticed that these circles are a common feature among all of the bird entries here, but some of them, such as on the brown-faced go-away bird and the black-faced go-away bird, they have little letters and different colors in them. What does that all mean? So, when you are trying to make a book called All the Birds of the World, in which you are going to have an entry for every single species of bird in the world, you have to deal with the difficult fact that not everyone agrees on how many species of bird there are. This isn't because there's a ton of species that are awaiting discovery in like the jungle, though there might be a few of those left. The reason why there is debate as to how many species of bird there are is because in many cases it's actually kind of hard to tell if a population of birds is a population of one larger, broader species, or is its own unique species. This is because speciation is often not black and white and can be kind of on a spectrum where there's a bunch of hybridization happening between populations, as well as some other reasons that might lead to confusion that we don't have the time to get into here. But just note there are some populations of birds where whether or not they're their own species or not is an ongoing research topic. But anyways, the fact that there is debate means that depending on what resource you go to, they're going to give you different total numbers of bird species in the world and are going to regard some populations as a subspecies and other as a full species that won't be considered on another resource. So when you're constructing a book like this, how do you handle that? Their solution lies in this circle. So as explained earlier in the book, and also on this very handy laminated bookmark that the book includes, each slice of the circle represents a different checklist of what they consider to be the 4 main bird species checklists. The upper left represents the HPW and BirdLife checklist. The one on the upper right represents the eBird/Clements checklist. The one on the lower left represents the Howard and Moore complete checklist. And then the one on the lower right represents the IOC World Bird List. If the pie slice is red, it means that the checklist that corresponds to that pie slice recognizes this bird as its own unique species. In most cases, about 90% of cases, all 4 checklists agree. As you can see on the gray go-away bird, every single checklist agrees that it is its own unique, distinctive species. But it's a different story when we look at the black-faced and the brown-faced go-away birds here. As the circle tells us, only the HBW checklist recognizes the black-faced go-away bird as its own distinctive species. The other 3 just regard it as a subspecies. And then it's not represented here, but if one of the pie slices is white, it means that that checklist doesn't even recognize it as a distinctive population. And then the letters on each quadrant allow you to know what that checklist considers this bird to be a subspecies of. So as we can see here, since this one has all lowercase a's and this one has all uppercase a's, all 3 of these other checklists all consider the black-faced go-away bird to just be a subspecies of the brown-faced go-away bird. These letters are very helpful when the 2 different populations that the checklists consider to be the same versus different are not right next to each other on the page, or there's a lot of them all right next to each other. It helps you know what goes to what. But I think this is really cool and is a really cool solution to the difficulty of not knowing how many bird species there truly are. They went into this with the logic of, as long as one of these 4 checklists recognizes it as a distinctive species, we'll give it its own entry, but we'll include this other information so you know that this is a bit debated. This also serves as a really good way to potentially help prevent the book from being dated over time. This book will get dated over time. In fact, this book already is dated in several ways. But the fact that it already has these 2 as completely separate entries helps make it so that if maybe more studies show that the black-faced go-away bird is indeed its own species, and more checklists begin to recognize it as such, it already has its own entry here. So you can kind of imagine that this book represents the maximum splitting hypothesis, in which every single bird that could be its own species is represented as its own species here. At the very least, the maximum splitting hypothesis at the time that it was made, I should add. Because there are a couple areas where that is not true anymore. Oh my gosh, the deer's in the yard now! I got myself a yard deer. Oh, I apologize. I got ahead of myself. I realized I didn't finish covering everything in each bird species section. So you also notice there's a QR code that goes with every species, and that links it to its page on eBird. And then last, so subtle that you might not have noticed it, every single species has this small little square checkbox next to its name. This so faint that it's usually not noticeable. The idea of this feature is to allow you to check off the bird species that you have seen if you want to. And they included 4 different sections in case you wanted to have individual check marks for maybe like whether you've seen it, heard photos, whatever you want to do. For your own personal marking mechanism. But they also recognize that not everyone wants to do that, so they made them super, super faint. So honestly, like, you just don't even notice them if you're not looking for them. But you can see over here that I do indeed utilize these little check marks and do check off all the bird species that I've seen. But yeah, that's basically it for the main section of the book. Now I'm going to cover some of the additional features that the book has. First, I should say that in the page underneath the cover, it has a cool little illustration of all the different bird species, all the different families, my bad. Page numbers where you can find them, numbers of birds. This is a really cool, very simple reference guide. And these are for the non-passerines, and then I'll show you later, but on the back of the book, it has the same thing for the passerine species. Passerines being the songbirds, for those who don't know, and they make up about half of all bird species. We also have a nifty little phylogeny here of the non-passerines and here of the passerines. Because I'm a phylogeny nerd, I do want to note that this is not necessarily set in stone, though broadly this is pretty accurate. A lot of the larger splits are probably pretty robust. But phylogenies are usually things that are under very active research and study. And so there are like some groups in here that you could potentially like flip-flop where a couple of the families go and how they're related to each other based on the currently available research. So I'm basically saying that not every single split here is law, but like 95% of this is very likely the case to be the legit real relationships to all the families. We also have a lot of information in the intro here, which I do highly encourage you to read because it goes into even more detail about how to use the book than I just did. But then as we go through the main section of the book, we arrive at the back where we arrive to the extinct species section. These are all species that have gone extinct after the year 1500, so you won't find any moa or terror birds or Archaeopteryx on this list. And the reason why they chose 1500 is because it's a nice round year and there's also like basically no records before that. We have an illustration for all the ones that we have a pretty good idea what they looked like, and then just these, just all these silhouettes for birds that are very poorly known and we don't really have a good idea of exactly what they looked like. Oh, here we just have taxonomic nomenclature, debates and stuff for the nerdiest of nerds, country codes, and then in the back we actually have a bunch of maps, which is pretty cool, of the entire world. So if you want to look at the entire world via map, there you go. list of how many endemic species each country has. An endemic species is a species that's only found in that country and no other country. And then some more like kind of random stuff at the end. We have an index. And then at the very end here, we have the all the passerine families that I mentioned before. So that covers all the features of this book. Now I do want to get into a couple of complaints that I have about it, which are very few and relatively minor. One of the complaints I do have is that all the range maps only show the species' native range. They do not show off where a species has been introduced. Maybe that won't bug some people, and I mean, it is the case for most bird species. Most bird species are not found outside of their native range, but there are a few that are. Like European starlings, for example, it just shows them existing in Europe. And that kind of bugs me a little bit because I'm like, the European starlings are everywhere. Same with house sparrows. They only show them being in Eurasia, which is most certainly not the case anymore. Okay, here's the other complaint that I have. Look at this guy here, the Bachman's warbler. So the Bachman's warbler, as well as some other bird species, are not included in the extinct species section, despite the fact that it essentially almost certainly is. The Bachman's warbler has not been seen in like 50 years, and it lives in a very populated area with lots of birders and lots of wildlife monitoring. I personally cannot imagine it would still be around and no one has seen it for 50 years. But it's still in here because the IUCN has not classified it as extinct yet. I don't necessarily know the reasons why it hasn't done that. Maybe it just has to do with they haven't had enough time to get around to updating it. I don't know. But there are multiple species like that are in the main section of the book here. Though I do like how for quite a few of them they do have this PE after the critically endangered section, which means possibly extinct, but you know, it is what it is, and I would just say that for some of these species it might do good to do some more research on to learn that, oh, this is probably an extinct species, because they just don't have the room to give that information here. Really, I'd say in general, that's what this book is also really useful for is that even if it doesn't give a ton of detailed information about bird species or groups itself, it can provide some little nuggets of information that can be cool research questions to potentially look up. And those two complaints I made with the range maps and the fact that some extinct species are on here really are my only two complaints. I guess another one I have is I have found some of the illustrations, the coloration of them is not necessarily always super faithful to what the bird actually looks like, in my opinion, but at the very least all the pictures here are very high res, very well done, very talented artists drew these. Yeah, the amount of drawings in this book is absolutely insane. It has, hold on, I wrote this down, 20,865 individual bird drawings. That is an insane amount. Oh, sorry, before I forget, the other thing I want to say is with the book getting dated over time, there are some bird species splits that are not represented in this book, despite their attempt to try to demonstrate that in every case. And that just has to do with future research showing things that they didn't suspect when they wrote this book. And you'll find things like that, I'm sure, scattered throughout. Obviously, it's not going to be updated on some of the bird name changes that are happening in North America soon. I mean, this book is going to get dated over time. It's just the nature of a scientific themed book like this. It's just what happens. And sorry, I forgot about this information until I was done filming the review, but if you order the book from the actual publishing company at the very least, it does come in this very nice box with this very nice container around it to really make sure it doesn't rattle around or get damaged at all in transit. I was really impressed by that and very happy to see that they knew that this is a very expensive book and took these precautions to make sure that it will get to you safely. At the very least, this should be the case if you order it from the publishing company like I did. I can't guarantee if it's from another source, but I'll put the link to buy this book in the description below. But yeah, I love this book so much. I am not joking when I say I whip it out at least once a month. It's just such a satisfying way to view the biodiversity of birds in this world. And I hope this review has helped you if you're a massive taxonomic biodiversity nerd like me, maybe this has convinced you that this is indeed worth it. And maybe if you're not, maybe you're like, thanks for the review, but it's not really my thing, in which case I'm very happy I helped you come to that decision as well. And before I go here, I'm just going to plug real quick the only other Lynx book that I currently own, The Birds of the Mesozoic, which is a field guide of all of the birds in the Mesozoic. I just want to plug that real quick because I know a lot of my audience likes themselves some Mesozoic dinosaurs. They have a book called All the Mammals of the World, which is kind of like is in the same format as this. And I know I'm going to get that at some point too, just because I love this thing so much. I honestly can't imagine I won't love the mammal book too. But anyways, this review has certainly gone on longer than it probably should have. I have a way of rambling. But I appreciate your time watching this, and I hope that you have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. And before I go here, I'm just going to plug real quick my tripod.